We lost a legend yesterday, David Horowitz. David Horowitz was a mentor and a friend of mine, one of the original people who really believed in the vision of Turning Point USA. He would have these things called the David Horowitz Restoration Weekends. They would almost always be the second week of November. They'd be every year, but they would be most famous for being restoration after an election. So after a midterm election or a presidential election, they'd either be a time to be amongst friends if we didn't like the result, or a time to also celebrate if we loved the result. David Horowitz is a titan. He was a former communist. He wrote prolifically. He was an incredible mind. Being a former communist, he understood what motivated the left. We hit it off. I would go to the Restoration Weekend, and he would introduce me to donors that I had no business knowing. You see, he kind of had this confab of all these donors, and as I look around the Turning Point USA complex, that building, all named of people that donated to us that I met at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Our biggest donors to this day are people I met at David Horowitz's donor retreat. And he never cared an inch that I was there trying to meet donors. He said, Charlie's doing good work, the more the merrier. You know how rare that is? Do you know how rare that is to actually go to an event where they're not trying to block you and say, these are our donors and my donors? And I try to do the best I can. I say, okay, if people want to show up to Turning Point USA, I just kind of shrug my shoulders. I learned that from David. No territorialism. No gatekeeping. Instead, David would say, Charlie's doing something great for kids. Let's do something for him. We get attacked so much by people that are so protective of their donors. And he was genuine and he was grassrootsy. And David, to his credit, I remember sitting down with him back in 2014, and we were only 2 years into Turning Point USA, and I cast the whole vision. And he said, Charlie, you got to be aggressive on these campuses. Make the liberals come to the mic. Make the communists expose who they are. And put it on the internet. And of course, he was one of many people that inspired me to have that hyper-aggressive tact to go right into the belly of the beast. And I want to play one of his pieces of tape here. This is David Horowitz doing what I now do way before me. This was back in 2010. I was still in high school. He would go to these college campuses and he would do an open mic. And man, did he understand the left, because he was raised as a communist. Let's play right now, cut 340.
Will you condemn Hamas here and now?
I'm sorry, what?
Will you condemn Hamas?
Would I condemn Hamas?
As a terrorist organization, genocidal organization?
Are you asking me to put myself on a cross?
So you won't. I actually have had this experience many times. You didn't read the pamphlet because the pamphlet is chapter and verse. The main connection is that the MSA is part of the Muslim Brotherhood Network.
I meant if I say something, I'm sure that I will be arrested for reasons of Homeland Security. So if you could please just answer my question.
If you condemn Hamas, Homeland Security will arrest you.
If I support Hamas, because your question forces me to condemn Hamas. If I support Hamas, I look really bad.
If you don't condemn Hamas, obviously you support it. I'm a Jew. The head of Hezbollah has said that he hopes that we will gather in Israel so he doesn't have to hunt us down globally. For it or against it?
For it.
And if that sends chills down your spine, boy, does that not complete what we've been talking about this entire episode about the rise of Islam in Texas. And he had a way to provoke it and to flush it out. I encourage you guys to check out David Horowitz's books. He just wrote one right before his death that was incredibly powerful. He had this book called The Black Book. I want to get the exact title. He had a great book called Radical Son, A Generational Odyssey. And my goodness, that's right. The Black Book of the American Left is one of the greatest books to understand the left. He also wrote a book called Hating Whitey, all the way back in 1999. He was ahead of the curve on all this stuff. With new tariffs rolling in, families everywhere are bracing for yet another jump in grocery prices. But GoodRanchers.com is tariff-proof, thanks to their 100% American supply chain. While others scramble to adjust, Good Ranchers delivers consistent prices and unbeatable quality, all from farms right here in America. Good Ranchers is also giving you your pick of free meat for life when you subscribe. That's free ground beef, wild-caught salmon, seed oil-free chicken nuggets, or bacon in every box for life of your subscription. That's $300 of free meat your first year, second year, and every year for as long as you stay, and you're going to want to stay. Not only are the cuts of beef, chicken, pork, and seafood delicious, but the service and value they deliver is unmatched. Tariff-proof your meals with Good Ranchers. Visit goodranchers.com. Unlock your free meat for life. $40 off with promo code Kirk. That's goodranchers.com, promo code Kirk. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. I wanted to try to get a guest who really respected and understood the profound impact that David Horowitz had on the conservative movement. You see, David was a former communist, was a fighter, a street fighter. He loved to fight, and he was good at it. But he was really on the cutting edge. I put him in a group of people, small group of people that predated my involvement in the national conservative movement. I was involved in local politics. A small group of people. It would be Andrew Breitbart. It would be David Horowitz. Bannon would definitely be on that list. Rush Limbaugh. That kind of held up the conservative movement in that 08, 09, 2010, 2011 bracket where things seemed really dark. Obama looked ascendant, the country looked like it was going left, and Horowitz was one of the few people to hold the line. Joining us now is Mike Cernovich, great friend, author, filmmaker, and really understands this, and that's why I wanted to have him. Mike, thanks for taking the time. It's too bad. It's tragic that we lost David. What is your thoughts on this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, losing David hurt, and then of course Dennis Prager. We've all been praying for his recovery. Yep. That hurt. And what I respected about David Horowitz, and you touched on it too, but what David did even more than I think Andrew Breitbart or Rush Limbaugh is, most people assume that people got into MAGA for the money. But I remember when, you at the RNC in 2016, I remember early MAGA, I was buying a lot of dinners.
Yes, sir.
It was just completely under-resourced. There was no resourcing at all.
There was nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. And David Horowitz was an exception where it's not, he wasn't even a billionaire. Imagine if he had been a billionaire, the good that he would have done. But even with what he did is he would resource a lot of young conservatives, give them,
Yep.
Give them stuff to do, help people out here and there. He had his Freedom Fellowship, and he would promote people. And that's something that in 2025, people take it for granted. But there was no, if you were a young conservative, you couldn't really become politically active. And that is why the right wing was losing the culture. There's all these purists who say, oh, how dare people make money doing this? And it's like, great, okay, then you're 22, 23, you're a conservative. What are you going to do with all that energy? Well, you're not going to do politics. You're not going to do media. You're going to have to go do something else with your life. And then people go, why? And then those same people go, why do we lose the youth? Gosh, wow, what a mystery, right? So Horowitz, he understood a lot. He went through a lot. The early cancel culture stuff, because he was a little bit older, I feel like fell under the radar. MasterCard deplatformed him.
Yep.
Remember
That's
Patreon?
Right. That's right. I forgot about that. You're right. You're exactly right.
So he was patient zero for the deplatforming. He had, Jihad Watch, that was always getting attacked. The SPLC smeared him. And he withstood a lot of devastating hits, and he was always building people up. And then what also, he understood, and I don't know why people don't understand this now, but he understood that if other causes are near and dear to your heart, the best thing that you can do is help young conservatives, because then when you want to talk to them about a cause that's near and dear to your heart, they're willing to listen. It doesn't mean that they're going to agree with you, but they're going to be willing to listen. So he wasn't a finger-wagging moralist, I think, in a way a lot of other people are these days.
We can go through the list of people that got their start at David Horowitz Freedom Center retreats. I'm one of them. Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller was an upstart, kind of anti-immigration speaker, and David Horowitz was his mentor. And it's just one of many people. And can you talk, Mike? He understood the left in a time where a lot of Vichy French, Mitt Romney, Koch brother mentality was dominating the GOP, meaning that in 2012, 2013, 2014, when I was first getting my start, it was all like, look, Charlie, it's a battle of ideas, and if we win the debate, we'll win the country, and decency will prevail. And David would always say, that's a bunch of crap. He said, these people want us dead, they want us in prison, they want the country burned, and we must fight them, and all they understand is power. Can you comment on how he was so insistent on the tactics to fight the left, because he was a former communist himself.
Right. That was interesting you bring up the Koch brothers, because that was, again, a lot of people take this for granted because the Koch brothers were anti-MAGA. They funded all of these libertarian things, and everything before Horowitz was not about culture. It wasn't about the spiritual dimension. Everything was really just commerce. This is,
Bingo.
again, in 2025, if you're new to politics, you don't understand that the GOP worshipped at the altar of money.
That's right. And
worshiped
David never
Moloch.
cared about that. He was like, I'm talking about Islam. I'll talk about the trans stuff. He talked about race before anybody else.
Yeah, Jihad Watch got him in all kinds of trouble. Robert Spencer, even though Robert and I get into it now and then, they understood these cultural issues. But the GOP people take it for granted, and this is something we have to fight against even to this day. It primarily was the party of Moloch, about money. Oh, we need unlimited free markets. We need open borders. And who cares if your spiritual life suffers? And who cares if you have to move away from your family to get a job? We're just all economic widgets. And that was the prevailing orthodoxy that Horowitz was fighting against. And that's what Trump was fighting against. I mean, and recently, I enjoy making fun of Canadians because, mainly because I'm tired of certain high-profile Canadians coming to my country and then, telling me that we need to tone it down. It's like, well, you just left Canada, though. So maybe go back to Canada and fight for Canada. But if we're being unironic or we're just being serious for a moment, had we not had people like Horowitz and Andrew Breitbart, had we not had Trump in 2015, 2016, how would we be? We would have Mark Carney as president right now.
That's right. This is the most profound point, Mike. Is probably 5 people that kept us from a liberal takeover of the country. It was Trump, which, by the way, Trump is the inheritor of a lot of Horowitz philosophy. Trump loved David Horowitz. In fact, I put them on the phone together once because he was like, "Oh, I love David. He's so good for me." And it was one of David's favorite moments of his life to be able to talk to the president on the phone. But Rush Limbaugh, Bannon, Breitbart. And I love what you talk about, too. Can you comment on this? About 2 minutes remaining. It was so ragtag. It was this insurgency guerrilla army. This was before Turning Point had anything, right? You and I were out in the streets just kind of arguing. This is before all the trappings and before MAGA was a thing. And David was the backbone of so much of that.
Yeah, David gave people inspiration. He gave people enough where you could kind of figure it out, right? The big thing lacking right now in the conservative world is a lot of these young people, nobody's trying to get rich, just help them out a little bit. Help, buy a few dinners, do a few events, buy a few plane tickets. But yeah, people don't get it. I found that old video of Charlie Kirk in 2016. I lost all my periscopes. It was a catastrophe for journalism, but for whatever reason I had one, and I posted it, just Charlie Kirk on a megaphone. So in 2025, people think, oh, MAGA, this dude, you don't understand. People just showed up with a megaphone. Me and Pasovik would just show up. That was all you did, right? And that was the reality.
There was no Charlie Kirk Show podcast. There was no. It was literally, we were at the RNC. There were a bunch of commies, and we said, "Hey, let's just go get a megaphone." We weren't even filming it. We were just like, "Let's go defend our guy." And it went viral, and you were periscoping it. And you gotta understand and appreciate, people in the audience, I think, do that. Now that, right, literally as we're talking right now, Mike, there's this cabinet meeting and, we're in control of the government and all that, and it's wonderful, it's great. But we were inches, literally, in July 13th, but despite that, inches away from becoming Canada. And David Horowitz was the one that was just in this gap saying, nope, we're not going to do that. Here is how you fight. What lessons can we learn from David Horowitz in this current circumstance that we're in right now, Mike?
Yeah, because he was a former leftist, and I'm glad you had me on for this second segment, because something we were kind of talking around but didn't put really into words between Horowitz, Breitbart, and others was it's called the fighting spirit, right? Mm-hmm. The left gets in our faces and we go, we're so precious, we're so afraid. Oh, I don't feel safe on camp. That's totally anathema to the David Horowitz way, right? I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe at Columbia. You don't feel safe walking around an Ivy League campus? Really? You guys don't? And that strain of Paul Ryan conservatism, if you want to call it that, or conservatism, is reinfecting the younger generation. The Horowitz way, the Breitbart way, you just, like I said, that's why I posted that videos. You just walked into a group of goons at the RNC, communist goons, and you just walked in there. And you had one guy with you. You didn't have some Army and Navy SEALs around you.
We had nothing.
And I was there keeping an eye on, and Posobiec was around there somewhere. And you just walked into the fire, as Breitbart said. And a lot of that is an energy which, for reasons I don't understand, traditional conservatives kind of struggle with, is vibe and aura. What do you mean vibe and aura? What do you mean? It's get in their faces. So just yesterday, Jamie Raskin incited looks like a hate mob on Posobiec, because Posobiec went to an event and said, well, why did you waste all this money on impeachment? These are things that we do now, or that we did, the early OG MAGA, that whether we knew it or not, it was due to the zeitgeist being created on the right by the Horowitz, Breitbart, and those other types. So I think the lesson that everybody should learn is that, hey, we're not potted plants. We're not wallflowers. We don't run from the left. We don't cry. We don't throw little temper tantrums. We use the tactics, if you will, that they do, which is go to their events. There was a video of a woman recently going to an event in Texas and saying things about Islam, which personally for me is a little bit of a soft spot, because I try to respect all religions. But there is a sense where they're left-wing activists doing left-wing things. They'll come to our stuff. Why don't we go to their stuff? Well, why don't more people do what you did and go into the commies and speak the truth? Why don't more people do what Posobiec did just yesterday to Jamie Raskin and say, oh, you guys are frauds? Or Hakeem Jeffries is sitting on the Capitol steps for 6 hours, doing impeachment hoaxes and standing up for MS-13. Why doesn't it just occur to the right wing to say, well, wait, they're there on the Capitol steps? Why don't I go them and ask them why they love MS-13? Why doesn't it occur to our people to do that? Because if you had two Republicans there on the Capitol steps, leftists would be there in a second, right? And I'm not saying be violent like the left, but leftists would say, wait a minute, we got two Republican Congress members here on the Capitol steps. We're going to go there and we're going to ask them questions. Okay. I watched that and I was upset because I was already out of town. I was on a flight, I think, when it happened. And all I could think of is, why doesn't it occur to young conservatives? Go up there and ask them why they love MS-13. Go up there and ask them why they love Hamas, right? I don't want to see people, because I've gotten into it with some people and a lot of people are upset with me and I don't really care. I don't want to see people who are in their 20s, the prime of life. Oh, I'm afraid to walk on a campus. No, why don't you go up there and say, hey, Hakeem Jeffries, why do you love Hamas so much? And they'll go, oh, I don't know that they do, though. I mean, they do.
That's what David Horowitz would teach us to do. That's right.
Right. Go do it. How are you going to let them be there for 6 hours? And then you want to cry in a little corner? This is not the Horowitz way. It's not the OG MAGA way. It's not our way. And that's the message I hope people be more like David Horowitz. Go up to these people. Again, not violent, but just say, hey, why do you guys love Hamas so much? Make them defend themselves. Because the left-wing tactic that OG MAGA was great at, and this wisdom is getting lost, and I don't know why. It's endlessly driving me crazy. The Horowitz way, the Breitbart way. Make them answer the allegation.
That's right.
Right? Make them. Why do you love Hamas? Oh, I don't. Make them. Well, why is it always us playing defense?
And it requires you to be on the offensive and literally get out of your studio, right? Do what I do, to go to these college campuses and to be around people that don't always agree with you, and to set the tone and set the directive. And David embodied that better than anybody else. Mike, great work as always. Anything you want to plug? 15 seconds.
No, but I will tell more people, be like David Horowitz. You're going to get a lot further. You're going to get a lot further in life.
Very good. Mike, thanks so much.